Welcome to the Use Your Inside Voice podcast. I'm Heather Dawn. Let's kick it off with a dance party. Hey there. My name is Heather Dawn, and this is Use Your Inside Voice, my new podcast. I wanted to just jump on here and take a little bit of time to kind of give you an origin story of how this podcast even came to be. So it is today, the 10th of October, 2025. And my idea to have a podcast, the thought to be a podcaster, to even want to do this, kind of stemmed from the healing journey that I've been on. And I used podcasts as a huge piece of my time spent working on myself. Like I would find podcasts that would resonate, something that I maybe was trying to deal with or that I felt challenged by, and I would listen to a lot of podcasts. And I just really fell in love with the idea and the platform of being able to come on to a podcast and talk about whatever it is that I wanted to talk about. I just found it so comforting to put on a podcast while I was cleaning my room, or while I was folding laundry, or while I was taking a walk, or driving in the car. And it was just a way for me to consume information that was interesting and helpful while I was doing something else in my life. And I kind of fell in love with the healing journey that I went on. And I felt like I was learning so much about myself that the idea to have my own podcast was sort of incepted in my brain. Well, let's fast forward, or rather, let's rewind. I think I just had that seed planted. And then I was cruising around on a friend's website, and I happened to notice a comment made by a woman. And it was an interesting comment. And so I sort of followed the wormhole down, and I looked this woman up. And I became very fascinated by her story that I could see from her Facebook page. And without thinking at all, I just messaged her and I said, "Hey, we have a mutual friend. Your story is really fascinating to me, and I would love to interview you on my podcast." And she replied back immediately, "Of course, I would love to." And so I just booked the appointment to do the podcast and jumped on a Zoom with her and recorded it. And you guys, that was March 22nd of 2024. So where are we again? We're October 10th of 2025. Now, you might be thinking, "Oh, that's really great. Congratulations that you dragged your feet for, what is that, like a year and 9 months or something like that?" Yeah, or a year and 7 months. Um, mhm. Yes, that is what happened. This journey of healing is not for the weak. It is not for the faint of heart. And it is most certainly not for those that are going to be so critical to themselves that they put a long pause on something that they felt inspired to do. And so I recorded that episode in March, intending to create a podcast. And then I got stuck and became sort of frozen in that whole process, and continued to do the work on myself, continued to put myself in rooms where growth was happening, continued to listen to other podcasts, continued to read books, continued to journal, continued to do all the things that I needed to do to stir all of the things up inside of me, excavate things, and start peeling back layers and uncover what needed to be uncovered. A year ago in October, I attended a very powerful, soul stirring training that was about a week long. And I came out of that training so fired up and so amped up to just do this podcast. At that time, And during that week, I connected very deeply to the name of the podcast and what that name means to me in my life. And so I'm going to share that with you right now. Use your inside voice. Uh, how that message was received by me when I was 9 years old was through my grandmother. And I was a loud kid. I was a loud kid. And I really wanted my presence to be known. And she was a school teacher and meaning nothing except, please use your inside voice. I heard and what became internalized in me. And I might add, at 9 years old, I didn't realize this. At 19 years old, I didn't realize this. At 29 years old, I didn't realize this. At 39 years old, I didn't realize this. It wasn't until I was 49 years old, 40 years, uh, that I realized that I had internalized the message when she said, Heather, use your inside voice. I had internalized the message that nobody wanted to hear what I had to say. Oof, it's hard to say this. And basically, be quiet and, you know, don't share. Well, those of you that have known me my entire life are going to say, but that doesn't seem like you took that advice. Well, that's right, because in that moment, as a 9-year-old, that was the message that was received. No one wants to hear what you have to say, like, zip it, kiddo. And so I spent the next 40 years proving to everybody else that what I had to say was valid. What I neglected to do, and where this sort of epiphany came from, is that I never told my 9-year-old that it was okay and that what she had to say was important. And basically, I abandoned her in that moment and I went on to be more outwardly presenting as confident. But inside, I always had that voice saying, I get emotional when I think about this, saying, no one wants to hear what you have to say. No one wants to hear what you have to say. Whew. And imagine growing up, being put in leadership positions, taking roles in community service that require a leader, and always having that belief in the back of my head that no one wants to hear what I have to say. When I connected to that last year during this same week, I realized that there's been a performative part of me that has been wanting everybody else to tell me that what I have to say is important, but I didn't believe it myself. And so I needed to go back and talk to that little girl and tell her, I'm sorry that I left you. I'm sorry that I abandoned you. What you have to say is so important. You have a voice and you have something to share. And so the name of this podcast was born. Use your inside voice. And it means something completely different to me because my inside voice is that 9-year-old girl. My inside voice is allowing her to be free from that belief. It's me taking her by the hand and saying, yeah, what you have to say is really important. You're an amazing, amazing person. And people do want to hear what you have to say. So after that event, I came home and I recorded 9 more episodes. And then they sat on my computer for 11 months. I intended to release this podcast in November of last year. And as life does often, I was presented with more opportunities to face myself and more opportunities to do more work. And here's what I'm going to say. I sit before you today. My hair is longer than in all of the podcast episodes. My life today is completely different than it was 1 year ago. I've had a lot of pretty major changes go on in my life. And it's clear to me now that I didn't have the capacity in my life to release the podcast last year in November. There was too much other, more intense things going on in my world. And so it's time. I'm in a place now where I have more capacity. My situation in my life is completely different than it was a year ago, and I'm ready. I have the capacity. So I'm very, very excited to share with you this podcast that is me claiming my voice, that is me celebrating extraordinary men and extraordinary women as they do extraordinary things out in the world. It's me bringing you interesting conversations. It's me sharing pieces of myself and using that inside voice that's more of like my internal guide, not the inside voice of a quiet as a mouse voice or a more palatable voice. This is my voice, and this is me being proud of the things that I'm going to talk about. This is me being aligned with the things that I'm going to talk about. And this is me sharing from a space of healed, whole, and happy. So come with me on this journey. I invite you to notice how imperfect it is. I invite you to notice it's not polished. I invite you to notice there are ums and there are uhs and there are loops of questions sometimes. And I invite you to see that it is not in a studio and it is not perfect. And that's what makes it wonderful. So come with me on this journey and watch the evolution of this podcast as we continue to go. I'm excited to share with you my first 2 episodes coming up after this, and then 1 episode weekly will be released. So look forward to that. I'm really excited, and I feel peaceful and ready for this incredible, exquisite opportunity to use my voice and to bring a little joy and perspective and love and light into this world. So please enjoy the Use Your Inside Voice podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Use Your Inside Voice podcast. I'm Heather Dawn. We'll see you next Friday and every Friday after that.